Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Relationships series, an exclusive for KYI'RA Portal members. I wanted to begin with the Talika, the soul's incarnational journey through matter. And I was absolutely sure I had done this one before, this particular part. But I couldn't find it. I mean, on my videos, I just haven't been able to find it. And maybe that's the way it should be, because I really want to put it into the context of this particular video theme, which is soul relationships. And as you know, when I'm delving into my past material, I'm not just reading it, I'm commenting on it. And I want to bring it into the whole program of the soul relationships, because this series deals with soul relationships, not just with each other's soul, but with aspects of your own soul. It's the whole picture, and it envelops twin flames and all of that. When I say the whole picture, I should never say the whole picture because I don't have the whole picture, and I don't think any human being on this planet does. So I didn't mean it that way, but I just meant from what I have, to present. So anyway, we shall begin with the Talika, the soul's incarnational journey through matter, and this comes from my 1996 issue. Let's see which issue, 1996 issue of Temple Doors. The information in this article was received from the Akashic records, most specifically those Thoth calls the records of Thoth, along with his ever-present overlighting. It discusses the Talika, which was an ancient name for the study of the hierarchical stages of the soul's descent into and journey through matter via reincarnation. The Talika does not address all manner of soul, matter, spirit integration, and cohesion, but only the processes of those souls involved in incarnational process. The first stage of the sacred procedure of the Talika is activated from the id, I-I-D. You can visualize the id as a pyramid-shaped energy system that is in and of itself an intelligence. This intelligence is composed of the consciousness of highly evolved beings in the universe that are known to us through biblical interpretation as Elohim. The Elohim are the worker bees of the creation universe. The creation universe is the matrix in which all other universes, including our own, are given the light mathematical codes for existence. So the id then is an energy pyramid containment field for the highly evolved intelligence and consciousness of the universal builders, or Elohim, of the creation universe. Now I wish to pause for a moment, because Elohim also, people are, writing about and everything, that Elohim also, it identifies actually the ultra beings that came to the earth, and these were the Elohim, and the ones that came that were up to no good were the Nephilim. And you had the Elohim, the Ephraim, the Elohim, the Nephilim. But actually, according to Thoth, it's a little more complex than that. There are Elohim inspired or divine beings that work in direct contact with the Elohimic creation universe. But the Elohim, when he refers to the Elohim, he's speaking of these creation lords, not in any beings that we could possibly understand as being incarnated in any way. Beings like Thoth, Osiris, whatever, they had a reference to those Elohimic creational lords, because they were part of the picture, the bigger picture of that creational realm. So they were endowed with the Elohim mantle, so to speak, but not Elohim in the sense that Thoth is placing that term. Same thing with the Nephilim. The Nephilim, the fallen lords, so to speak, there were many layers and gradients of them. Out of all of that comes the Anunnaki. That's the one tiny little part, and they're the free Nephilim. Those are the Nephilimic beings that have been redeemed, so to speak, and work back to be, reabsorb and come back into the light. Actually, in some ways, that's what we are, but he doesn't really call us that, because the Nephilim are actually, in many ways, more advanced than we are, but they're just not working for the right side. So he means advanced in understanding of certain, cosmic principles and how to operate, how to manipulate certain energy principles in the universe. But they are not working in accordance with divine order in that concept. I don't mean to get off on a whole nother topic, but I'm just trying to put this into context of what the Elohim mean when Thoth speaks of that. Okay, so let's get back here to the Talika. The id, intelligence, is in constant symbiotic contact with all souls in all universes. It therefore is what you might call the command center for the evolutionary experiential flow of all souls. This concept may be staggering to our linear way of thinking, but we must understand that the incredible number of souls involved means nothing to the greater realities which move within the one consciousness. As Thoth has told me, only the matter-bound must count the sheep to know how many there are or where they pasture. I like that. I'm going to read it again. Only the matter-bound must count the sheep to know how many there are or where they pasture. The id is at once with every single sheep, yet each soul is very individualistic in its incarnational passage, as it moves into realms that separate, distinguish, select, and individuate all experience. The soul must become one among many in order to find its way back to the eternality of the one. The id evaluates this individual process and creates pathways into matter realities for each soul. As all souls stem from the one, in order to move forward in cohesion with such a process as reincarnation and not create chaos and thus even further separation from source, the id uses light code bonding to bring souls together into units that are able to fit with other units, similar to a child's building blocks, until all souls are ultimately linked through families. Through this giant family tree, all is still one within the greater template, with the most extreme divisions taking place only in the final resolutions of the matter experience. The id is continually cognizant of the light codes in all stages of the soul's evolution, or what we would define as past, present, and future, and it then links that soul to its unit or grouping of souls. Souls will eventually become part of different units as they evolve. Apologies, I had to break for a moment, so I'm going to go back to that sentence beginning again. Souls will eventually become part of different units as they evolve, but only when they reach levels far beyond those available upon Earth. In other words, souls incarnating on this planet have been and will be in the same soul unit throughout their Earth experience. To clarify this a bit further, there are many soul groupings present within the Earth experience, but the souls that belong to them will remain so during their incarnational sojourn here. There are exceptions to this rule, but they are extremely rare and elaborate and are not within the immediate scope of this article. Now, I want to stress here that, like, you pass over from one life to another, you're in the in-between, and there's Uncle Harry and, Mom and Dad, and you're saying, oh my God, here you are, and they're saying, we're your soul family, they're part of your soul family, and they embrace you, and you go off into the light. Well, that's true. However, Uncle Harry and Mom and Dad could also be in another incarnational experience, your daughter, your best friend, even, a boss or a comrade of some kind in your life, and they aren't those personalities and those characters. When you cross over from one life experience, they're going to come to you as that, because that's what you're drawing. You recognize them, you understand them in that way. As your soul moves through various processes, you're going to see them in different ways. So you could have a huge soul grouping that you're incarnating with, and these beings, many of these beings will be in your lives again and again and again. And it's different personalities, different people, and when you cross over, those are the personalities that you're going to recognize to be able to bond and come into a healing soul grouping with your group again before you come back into another lifetime. Before continuing, we must differentiate a true soul unit of the id called a sati, meaning light cocoon, and that of lesser soul grouping of souls called a manika, who have collected on the inner planes and incarnate to work out a karmic scenario. This latter soul assembly is an expedient gathering which is temporary in our linear way of thinking and being of karmic circumstance. The Manika is not always perfectly aligned to the greater evolution. In one karmic grouping, several different Manikas are, I cannot say that, Manikas are very likely to be represented. Now, so in other words, let me go back and look at that again. It's a little convoluted, especially when I couldn't pronounce the word. A true soul unit of the id is called a sati, light cocoon, and that of a lesser grouping of souls called a manika. Now, the manika come together for very distinct karmic reasons, and they are not part of your light cocoon family, but they're kind of related to you in the sense of the karmic situations that have brought them into your experience. So they're more temporal in your soul grouping than the true sati or light cocoon. Okay, to continue. Now let us move further into the incarnating pattern. A non-incarnated aspect of a soul is the magna soul. The magna itself does not enter human experience, at least not with its entire containment field. It projects a beam or ray of its energy down into a physical biosystem as a lesser representation of its being. While most souls on Earth experience but one physical embodiment in a specific time zone, there are souls which will be into two or more embodiments within the same linear time frame or into parallel realities. Thus, a magna could be reaping incarnational experience in China, North America, and France all at the same period. This form of incarnational integration is called ambionic. Singular incarnation is given a linear time zone in a given linear time zone is entrophic. So we have ambionic for when you're kind of like perpetuating like baby rabbits all around. Not a lot of places. 1, 2, 3. I mean, 2, 3, or 4 maybe incarnations. I don't know that it goes any higher than that. Not sure. And the entropic is just one shot at a time. Now all souls have had both experiences, but the multiple soul experience is rare, not super rare, but rarer than just coming in a time frame magnetic zone one at a time. And then all of a sudden you might suddenly need 2 or 3 lifetimes in one zone for some reason, and it happens, but it's not anywhere near as prevalent as the one at a time entrophic version. A soul may have several entrophic incarnations, turning page, journeys, and then experience a series of ambionic ones. This would be due to either a decision to adjust karmic stability with greater rapidity, or to the soul assuming specific type of incarnational role for planetary transformational purposes, or to the soul assuming specific type of incarnational role for planetary transformational purposes. In the latter, the soul would be returning to ground light mathematical codes that can aid the planet as a whole by anchoring in more than one locale and scenario in the same time zone. Most souls are usually inclined to be entrophic or ambionic in their incarnational patterns rather than being able to fluidly move between these two types of incarnational experiences. This inclination is paragenetically transferred from the sati of that soul, determined by the inherent light codes of its origin. This does not necessarily mean that a soul inclined to embryonic incarnational experience will always incarnate within it, but that they will do so with greater frequency than a soul that is not paragenetically in resonance with that field to the same degree. Now, when it's speaking about souls who are usually inclined to be either entrophic or embryonic, the souls that are inclined to be more specifically embryonic are not regular souls, so to speak. In other words, they're not you and me souls. They're a specifically highly evolved type of soul system that works specifically for that function. That said, all of us have probably had embryonic experiences in some incarnational process or another. Okay, now that that's perfectly clear, I'll move on. Another type of incarnational pattern is called diatronic, meaning that the souls within this field are multidimensionally dispersed in their incarnating cycles. Very few souls incarnating on Earth are involved in diatronic experience. A soul may be both embryonically and diatronically inclined, however, thus they will tend to not only incarnate with multiplicity in one time zone, but in various dimensions or planes of being, also which are linked to that time zone. This falls into another complex format, which we will not venture into this article, but can give the following information for clarity, and this is the following information. For each point in time, there are multiple referencing strands or links which connect to other realms of experience. These links are formed when that point in time contains information that is related or relevant to the other dimension. This sets up matrices which hold other viable states for souls to experience incarnationally. As an example, let us follow the incarnational pattern of Magnasoul A. It beams into two separate life presences within the same time zone as embodiments 1 and 2. Well, it's not going to help if I stutter while I'm reading this. So let me start over. My eyes are especially kind of bad today. Sorry. Allergies make it all worse. Let me try again. This sets up matrices which hold other viable states for souls to experience incarnationally. As an example, let us follow the incarnational pattern of Magnasoul A. It beams into two separate life presences within the same time zone as embodiments 1 and embodiments 2. Embodiments 1 and 2. But it also moves diatronically into 5 alternate realities, which link to that same time zone. In these alternate realities, this soul is living on Earth in various parallel embodiments. Yet these Earth sojourns are not in the same dimension of reality as embodiment 1 and 2. Such a consideration shakes the very foundation of what we consider real, of what we know as history, and of how we relate to our reality. The incarnational experiences which Magnasoul A elicits in the diatronic experience are just as vital and as real as are the ones it creates in the embryonic as an embodiment 1 and 2, or even in the entrophic, should it have chosen that experience. Souls most likely to experience diatronic type incarnations. Now that is more than one soul incarnating in the same time zone. More than one incarnation of the same soul incarnating in the same time zone. And what Thoth really refers to more as magnetic zone. So souls most likely to experience diatronic type incarnations are those who have taken upon themselves the roles of serving the greater holistic universes through the process of gathering the organizational light mathematical codes and patternings which have been scattered during various stages of the fall from grace. In incarnating diatronically, the soul is able to bring these pieces into a cohesive unit of consciousness and redirect that consciousness back to source. There are other reasons for souls to experience occasional diatronic incarnations, multiple in the same magnetic time zone, remember, such as having been caught up in certain interdimensional vortices as a result of playing too close to the edge of time distortions. Now, I didn't even go there with him. I just went, okay, and I moved on. Now we approach another possible area of incarnational experience, which is that of soul layering or latticing. Several souls, which are usually but not always from the same sati or soul unit, will sometimes share incarnational experience within one biological system, i.e., a singular human being. This is called soul latticing. In this situation, there will be only one body soul, which is the soul actually projected into the physical system. The other souls which lattice to the body connect energetically and etherically to the biosystem through that soul. It is somewhat like a skydiving team holding hands in a formation as they drop through space. One wrong move and the whole formation would be imbalanced and possibly perish. Similarly, the soul team in the lattice must maintain specific balance patterns, beginning with the number and arrangement of the souls in the lattice. In the Earth's incarnational flow, within our present stage of planetary evolution, the number of souls in a lattice must be 3, 5, or 7. The arrangement of souls in a lattice is accomplished in consciousness through a particular relationship to one another. And although it is not a spatial relationship, it aligns to sacred geometry design through orientation with its spatial flow. How then do the laws of cause and effect work with such a multiple system of decision-making and action in a lattice soul experience? The body soul generally makes decisions that are in the greatest degree of polarity, such as what to eat, where, like, dislike, fear, etc. These are choices stemming from the emotions of the lower magnetic body. The body soul is the closest link to that force field and therefore the most interactive with it. The higher on the totem pole of the lattice the soul is in order of arrangement, the greater the spiritual recursion present and acted upon. This recursion is a fine-tuning system which formed a movement up and down the pillar of connectiveness between all the latticed souls, including the body soul. This hierarchical staging allows these souls to work in harmony, each tending a separate patch of the garden. Obviously, this type of arrangement requires a high calibration of spirit to matter synchronicity. This means that most of the souls in the lattice, really all of the souls in the lattice, I should have said, are highly evolved in order to perform the dance. But not all of the souls layered need to be so evolved. In other words, they're all evolved, rather evolved. They have to be. But some of them are really highly evolved, and others are not quite that much, okay? At least one is often a less aware soul who has reached the threshold of the greater experience and is being given an opportunity to advance by linking into a commanding matrix of master soul experience. So even the body soul of that individual that had some of this layering effect would be highly evolved in regard to you and me and everybody that's walking around on the street. They would be exceptional, okay? But they would be in relativity to the other souls that are layered above it, less evolved. And we're not talking about better than or worse than. We're talking about awareness. And there is a differential frequency involved in that. All souls are not equal in the sense of when they incarnate in what their souls are striving to learn. We are in varying stages of awareness. And usually, but not always, soul A incarnating may be aware of this and this and this much more than soul B, but soul B may be aware of these other things more than soul A. You see, so that's kind of where more equilibrium comes into everybody being equal. They're not really equal in the sense of where they are in the patterning, how much they've learned, what they have to achieve in all of this. But that's just within the envelope of incarnational process and learning in experiential environment. not in a greater high magna presence of souls. We could go on and talk about that more, but I'm sensing myself going off into the wild blue yonder. So I'm going to reel myself back and say simply that all of us in incarnational experience have our various strengths and weaknesses. I mean, that's a given. We all know that. But these strengths and weaknesses define our soul evolution and define where we are higher evolved or lesser evolved in some ways, in other ways than certain persons. And in some cases, we are completely more higher evolved than others, or completely lesser evolved than others. We don't have that give and take. Mostly we do, but there are cases where we just don't. We've just moved on so completely from where this other soul is that we are more highly evolved. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean we're superior? Well, what does superior mean? You know, you could really get into a conundrum of words and feelings about all of this, because we have been taught by society that superior means better than, and better than is it. That's the story. I'm better than you, or I'm lesser than you, and that's the end of it. That's not the end of it. It's a snapshot, and in this snapshot, I'm lesser evolved than soul B, and I'm more evolved than soul C. In this snapshot, we can't even begin to comprehend the whole greater pattern. And I'm not even trying to comprehend it. I'm just giving you what I have received thus far on it. Okay, so we come back to the text. Now, let me see where I was. I'm trying to find it. I should always put my finger where I was last. I so apologize. For some reason, the allergies are hitting me hard today. Now, usually latticed soul experiences are those which have a highly visible profile, such as Merlin, for instance. Merlin was a five soul lattice, with Thoth, the being Thoth, because he says, Thoth tells me that as Thoth Hora, as Thoth Erasmus of Afra, as Thoth Muzurud, those particular lifetimes, he was just one soul. You would think he would be a lot of souls, how fine evolved he is, but he says, no, his purpose in those particular lifetimes required that he concentrate the energy of this higher frequency being that he is into one soul experience. So that's what he did. Now he has a Merkaba field of souls that work with him, but that's a different thing. They aren't latticed in his incarnational form. So back to Thoth in Merlin. Merlin was a five-lattice soul with Thoth, the single soul of Thoth, as one of these entities. So then this single soul of Thoth went into the five-soul lattice of Merlin, okay? On rare occasions, souls which are spiritually disabled will also be allowed to lattice. I've forgotten that. The disabled souls are beings which were once highly evolved, but have since become distortions of their own original presence. Thus, they can still maintain a semblance of a lattice structure, but it is always quite far out of balance as compared to a healthy, synergetic latticing. So that's a problematic statement there. Not problematic, but to my little brain, I have a lot of questions about that, but I'm not going to go off on that here because it would take us off topic, actually. But what I am going to say is what I'm picking up from this is that there are rare occasions when a bunch of souls who have the power, the knowledge how to lattice, because they were once more evolved, more up on the totem pole, and they understand how to do it, come together and all lattice in to try to figure something out and get something done in a particular incarnation. But because they don't have the higher spiritual awareness anymore that's necessary, they could really mess things up. They could foul things up and yet still have a presence on the earth that's rather formidable. And I feel that's rather rare, but Thoth is mentioning it here. So that's about as far as I wish to go with that right now. So now to continue. Because most soul lattice embodiments are high-profile individuals, they usually become archetypes, like Merlin, Thoth, Osiris, that kind of thing. Although Thoth wasn't a lattice being, so I need to take him out of the picture. And I'm not sure about the others, other than Merlin. Okay, so back. As archetypes, many other souls can identify with them in the divine characteristics they represented. For this reason, the soul latticed embodiment or personality will often have numerous souls within its field of radiance feeding from its incarnational experience, although they are not able to affect or alter that evolution. These feeding souls are in direct archetypal receipt of that life experience. Even in situations where an embodiment is creating an archetype through its incarnational experience, which is the result of a singular soul like Thoth, and not a soul latticed arrangement, a band of archetypal groupies will generally still gather in the field of radiance. Thoth, in his best known incarnation as Same, was a singular soul and not a soul lattice, and yet he's also a very strong archetypal being, and as such has a band of souls who strongly identify with him, generally known now as the children of Thoth. And I raise my hand. Okay. Soul latticing and archetypal identifications can explain the phenomena whereby several different people may recall or akashically read different souls having been incarnated as the same person. For instance, in the New Age community, it is now common for individuals to receive information for themselves or others that indicate as an embodiment as Mary Magdalene. Most of these persons who are convinced that they or someone they have read for were Mary Magdalene are experiencing the archetypal identification of her true soul experience. This is a very profound feeling, for those souls did indeed feel through her being a certain resonance with their own soul path the time of her incarnation, and, excuse me, I'm going to turn a page, they thus retain that feeling and bonding in their soul memory. One or two of these persons who believed themselves to once have been Mary Magdalene were possibly part of her soul lattice, and thus really were incarnated, so to speak, as Mary. Most people in this age are not capable of the finer discernment necessary to distinguish between a past singular incarnation or a lattice incarnation as a specific personage, or to be able to discern an actual incarnation from an archetypal identification with a separate incarnated being or beings. This inability to distinguish such subtle differences is also present for many who read the Akashic for others. However, if the one receiving the information does so without egoic attachment, it is not important whether he or she actually lived in the past as Mary Magdalene. It is the essence of the information that should become aligned to his or her spiritual quest. This essence is that his/her soul has a strong spiritual connection to the principles exemplified in the life of Mary Magdalene. Now, I might also add here that if a soul actually was one of the lattice souls of Mary Magdalene, and he's inferring here that she was a lattice soul, and I don't have any other information on that from him. It's just referenced in here, so I'm assuming that she was. So, if they actually were one of those lattice souls, they would know it. They would know the nature of all of this. These words that I'm being given, I don't know where they're coming from. Are the ancient Atlantean words? Did Thoth just make them up and hand them to me on the spur of the moment? I don't know. But it doesn't matter about the wording. The idea, the consciousness, the universal law that's exemplified in what I'm reading here, they would know that because they would be highly evolved enough to know that. They wouldn't be groping around and saying, oh, I was Mary Magdalene. They would know, and they would keep it quiet in general, unless there was somebody specifically that needed to know that information. They wouldn't be writing books on it and putting it out that I was Mary Magdalene, So, but that doesn't mean that soul might not genuinely have been archetypifying that energy and really bringing in heart essence frequencies of that incarnate entity, and they felt guided to write about it or speak about it, and they just don't understand the principles, so they're saying they were Mary Magdalene. They're not trying to fake anything. It's just, that's just the law of the spirit, that how it operates is what I'm speaking about here. Okay. Okay, so where am I? It is assumed that souls trade places in a specific embodiment when both are dissatisfied with their current situation. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped a whole paragraph. Let's go back. Now we move to the category known throughout the metaphysical community as walk-ins. Walk-ins are identified as souls which have traded places upon agreement with a soul currently inhabiting a body. Thus, as the current body's soul leaves, the new tenant enters. The switch is made, and the individual feels suddenly different and not at all who they were before, although they will retain most memory in the cellular consciousness of that physical life prior to their entry into it. According to Thoth, such walk-in experiences do occur. However, they happen with far less frequency than presently believed. It is assumed that souls trade places in a specific embodiment when both are dissatisfied with their current situation. The current body soul is not able to fully do its work in that lifetime and wishes to move on, and the disincarnate soul is in a hurry to become physical for its own purposes, not wishing to go through the tedious stages of birth and maturity. Thoth tells us that this is not so. If such an exchange of realms were allowed to take place exclusively, because of these aforementioned reasons, souls would be in constant exchange, playing musical chairs to the extent that no karmic resolution would be possible. Walking in, or what Thoth prefers to call absulam, meaning to pass through, is dictated through the command center, or id, as a means for balancing an entire grid of soul placement. When these grids become imbalanced due to karmic saturation, certain tensions must be released through a reordering process. Often this requires rapid transitional methods. In the light of this purpose, there are points upon the grids which become energetically decentralized. This allows a more highly evolved soul to assume the embodiment of one which is in a lesser evolutionary state, so that the grid point that embodiment is holding may become more rapidly activated. This is really important to understand, not only from the principle of people going around all thinking they're walk-ins, but from the principle that when we're incarnating and having lifetimes, it's not a singular thing. And I'm not talking about a bunch of souls doing it together either. I'm talking about the whole picture. We're a point on a grid. We're working for the whole grid, the whole universal freaking grid, the whole thing. So we have an individual relationship with it, of course, but it's so much broader and so much faster than that. Okay, a walk-in of the first kind takes place when a soul not previously in the current incarnation comes into the body as the former soul moves out for the above-mentioned purposes. However, in a soul lattice, there is a variation of this in a second kind experience, where a soul may move into a lattice in which it was not previously incarnated without any of the other lattice souls moving out at all. So you might have a 5 lattice soul that moves to a 7, because it can't move to a 6 according to Thoth, not in our dynamic. So 2 more souls might enter into it at some point. But that's, these are more highly evolved souls, and they've got a whole other job to do, so to speak. Okay, if walk-ins are rarer than we have assumed, then what is it that so many people are experiencing, which they mistake for this condition? There are several different dynamics which can produce effects that would simulate, within the mental, emotional experience of the individual, the same conditions of a walk-in experience. As previously discussed, souls on rare occasion do change places with the current soul lattice, causing a perceptible difference in the persona of the individual and their actualization of enlightened consciousness. This latter is not truly a walk-in, since all souls in the soul lattice or incarnate together in that one embodiment, no matter what formation they may currently be assuming within it, but it can be mistaken for an Absalam or walk-in experience. I'm going to reread that myself just in thought for a moment because there's something I want to say about it, but I have to get it back in my mind here. Okay, so assuming souls are in a soul lattice for one of the purposes described, this is not really indicating this, but it's what I'm receiving. I should have included it here. For the purpose of trying to realign and get their act together. They've been, in a more highly evolved field, and now they're not so much. So they say, hey, let's get together, let's work this out, see if we can all come together, work on our karma, and get this straightened out. Because they have enough soul awareness still to realize they kind of messed up, So they're getting together for that, okay, in their little tea party. And in some instances, a soul just can't cut it with that frequency. It has to move out and another one will take its place. I think that's basically bottom line what he's talking about there. Okay, another possibility is simply a quantum burst in consciousness at some higher level, after which the individual feels it must be a new soul that has entered their body. This is usually coupled with a strong subconscious desire to leave behind the identity and perceived mistakes of the past, as well as to become a new and better being instantly. Now, this could be, any kind of really traumatic experience, but experience that is so commanding that it literally shakes one to the core and they feel born anew. Not a traumatic experience that's just, something so horrendous that it takes them down into the depths, but a traumatic experience that has a certain balance to it, even though it's challenging, that opens them up to receive this part of their being that they hadn't been feeling before. And they assume, well, it must be a walk-in because I feel so different, but it's not. A further similar dynamic that is often confused with walk-ins is when an individual accepts a greater part of self, well, this is what basically I'm kind of talking about, into the body to be integrated. This is an even larger movement than a quantum burst in consciousness at higher levels. One does not need to be a part of a soul lattice to have this experience. Remember, a single soul is but a beam or ray projection of a more complex magnesoul. Each soul projection perceives only a certain amount of its true dimension, and that amount is dependent on its karmic restrictions. Anytime some of the major restrictions are lifted, the soul will feel greatly expanded and reborn. They will often not have the same likes and dislikes they did before. They will gain an expanded perception, and in some cases exhibit talents they did not previously possess. They will very often feel a great disassociation from the personality they projected before this expansion occurred. None of these movements should be discredited and are just as viable in the process of soul evolution as is the walk-in. More so, in fact, since the walk-in is only a readjustment of an original movement rather than a smooth evolutionary process progression forward. Another condition about which there has been a great deal of discussion is that of multiple personalities. This too has its niche in the topic of soul function. According to Thoth, there are actually two forms of this condition, but before discussing them, we need to understand the dynamic behind the effect. We have stated in this article that a magnesoul is a complex system. It is one soul in comparison to a sati, which is a soul grouping containing phase-matching light codes, or a soul lattice, which are souls connecting through one body. Yet the magnesoul can register many different facets of expression through the human field of cognizance, if plumbed enough, deeply enough. Drugs can do this artificially, wreaking havoc within the association patterns of the brain can create logical conduits for deciphering the magnosoul through its projection into the biosystem. Also, great and or prolonged trauma can cause a breakdown of a natural filter between the magnosoul and its projected form in the host. This filter allows an individual personality to develop and evolve based on its gradual expansion of the magnosoul consciousness into the brain-mind complex. In some instances, trauma can cause the soul ray to try desperately to be released back to its magna womb. It is likened unto a deep sea diver running out of air in his portable tank, swimming frantically for the surface before his lungs collapse. Multiple personalities result when the ray tries to return to the magna. Of course, death would release the ray, but the human psychology does not so easily surrender to the premature abandonment of the body. More often, it will try other tactics to hide or escape while still holding on to the incarnating vehicle. Thus, as the ray attempts to become reabsorbed into its magnosoul, it must force its way rapidly through the filter. Within the layers of this filter are many unexpressed facets of self, which the soul has not chosen to fully project into its conscious personality. These facets are subpersonalities, which have compartmentalized away from the mainstreaming of soul-to-matter association in the brain-mind complex. All incarnated souls have these compartmentalized personalities tucked away between the layers of the filter. When the filter becomes overstimulated by the soul ray's desperate attempt to break through it and return to the magna, the filter simply crashes at one or more levels, like a computer fed too many programs. This releases some of the compartmentalized subpersonalities into the conscious mind stream. Since the conscious mind cannot act out of so many personalities at once, it stores them in the subconsciousness for periodic release. Their individual surfacing is determined by outer stimuli affecting the emotional body. The soul has been created a barrier between its emotional pain and the outside world. It is simulated the sati, the soul family, through which it can now delegate feelings as necessary to each member capable of dealing with those particular emotions and situations. This, of course, is a form of mental breakdown and not to be considered as a real solution to the problem. Some souls who have undergone acute trauma, not only in the current lifetime, but in past incarnations, will contain far more compartmentalized subpersonalities than someone with less intense karmic background. In their individual compartments, these subpersonalities are very basic. They contain the essence of a potential personality. Once they are released into the subconscious and conscious systems, they must be given a full-blown identity by the mind in order to relate to the rest of the mental being. This identity will invariably come from past or even future life experiences, which can include incarnations in other dimensions, like tronic. A single subpersonality may contain bits and pieces from several past future lives patchworked together to form the current compartmentalized entity. This is the most straightforward form of multiple personalities. A greater deviation is that of possession, when completely autonomous discarnate souls within the lower astral regions attach to these compartmentalized subpersonalities in an attempt to control them and experience through them. They will merge into these personalities that resonate with their own karmic fields. Thoth has given us the following analogy to summarize the formation and activity of compartmentalized subpersonalities and the subsequent possible activities of attaching or possessing entities. A troop of soldiers, once a tight and efficient system that could think and act as one body, come into contact with the enemy. A great battle ensues and the troops become scattered. Many soldiers are wounded and some are killed. They now lie in all manner of twisted shapes and conditions across the battlefield. They are no longer a confident force. Instead, they are in pain, frightened, and crying. They are without direction and feel totally alone and separate. they each begin to forget they were ever one. Then upon the field come the vagrants, who snatch and tear at their clothes and valuables. The wounded are too weak to resist. They allow the vagrants to take up their garments and wear them as their own. The condition of multiple personalities, escaping from the barrier of mind to invade the holistic being, is a grave dysfunction of the soul-body system. However, the principle of expanding emotional senses through various stages of identifying one's own compartmentalization can be worked with in a very positive way by both mentally healthy individuals and those in dire need of regrouping their scattered subpersonalities. Coming into cognizance of and drawing upon the compartments through spiritual awareness in a process of releasing all guilt and fear associated with these personality essences is a good exercise for cleansing and rebalancing the soul as an incarnating entity and becoming a more fully integrated being in the present embodiment. So this goes into the next part, which has to do with working with the integration of the subpersonalities, which is its own little article here. And I would really like to work with this as a separate video. So I'm going to conclude here the one on the Talika and following the soul through its incarnational journey. And then I'll go into the next video will have to do with the subpersonalities and how to work with them.